Right, hello everyone. Is this on? Can everyone hear me? Is that okay? Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for that introduction, Lee. Hello everyone, and thanks for inviting me, Adrian, to speak at this fantastic event. I've really had a lot of fun over the last couple of days. Last night was fantastic as well, so thanks very much for inviting me. I'm Stu, and I'm Chief Exec and Head of Distraction, which is a title given to me by my staff because I just distract everyone everywhere I go. So I'm Head of Distraction at BeeZee. BeeZee is a weight management service. Started out with weight management in children and families, but now we do everyone, including adults, young people, children and families. And my title today is to meeting the needs of real people. And what that means is really that when we work with people and to change their behaviours, we're not just giving them information, we're giving them information that they can actually use in context in their real lives, not just here's a recipe, here's some activity to do, off you go and change your behaviour. So that's what we mean by that. And the other thing is that we're tasked to work with reducing inequalities, which I'm sure many of you are now with the new guidance. And so we're really looking at how to reach the hard to reach. So that's what I mean by working with real people and being realistic about what we can actually achieve with those people. If you're wondering, these are real people. And I know that because Google told me, if you put in Google Images real person or real people, these are the first people that come up. So Google never lies, apart from about its taxes. So these are definitely real people. And what I'm going to start with, and I sort of regret this already, because I said to Adrian, I'm going to do an experiment. And I reckon with the number of people in the room, we can get pretty spot on with two pretty difficult questions. So under your chairs, you've got a piece of paper. We might need the house lights up for this bit. Because under your chairs, you've got a card, and it should have a couple of questions. It should have 4 questions on it. Okay, and so those 4 questions, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I don't want you to think about this. I don't want you to Google it. I don't want you to look it up on your tablets, your smartphones, or your computers. But I want you to answer that question. You've got 30 seconds to do it. You've got 4 questions there, and then we're going to take a vote and see if we can get someone to get this question actually right. Okay, so if we can start the clock, please. 30 seconds. No pressure. Suzanne, I'm expecting big things. Very close guess. 5 seconds, 5 seconds, people. Right, okay. So, now what we're going to do is, was that easy enough? Not a difficult thing. I know it was a bit of a heavy night for some of you last night, but that should have been relatively simple. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a vote. And what we're going to do is, if you think that we're going to try and get close. So if you think that there are more than 8 million people in Iceland, I want you to hold up and keep up your green card. And if you think there are less than 8 million people in Iceland, who live in Iceland, then I want you to hold up your red card. So could you hold up your green card or your red card? Okay. Okay, this seems to have gone badly. Okay, right, next one. If you think Bill Gates is worth more than $65 billion, please hold up your green card. And if you think he's worth less than $65 billion, hold up your red card. Okay, that one's gone slightly better. Okay, so apologies, because the actual the aim of this was not to try and find out if you could get the right number. Incidentally, the reality is that Bill Gates is worth 76.9 billion, and there's only 330,000 people in Iceland. But what happened? What we did there was it didn't work brilliant on the first one. But what we did was we introduced an anchor. So in the middle, your card says that the first anchor that we put on was that Bill Gates is worth more or less than, what does it say? $105 billion, and your one says $6.5 billion on the outside. And we put those in as an anchor so that you would actually be tethered to that information. And that was just arbitrary, I made that up. Didn't work brilliantly with the Iceland one, I'll grant you. I think we've got a more geographically advanced audience than normal. But it certainly worked a little bit better in the other one. And this is the sort of introduction to behavioural economics, in that we can be influenced to think things and to do things simply by introducing certain cues and primes. And that's exactly what I did. I did say I would regret it immediately, but still. It's basically introducing a piece of irrelevant information, and people are actually tied to that. And they really hold to that as well. If you introduce a piece of information to people, they really hold to that information, no matter if you introduce new information in the future. And so, to prove that, I mean, what fascinates me about working with families and people to help manage their weight is what they think is going to influence them to change their behaviour is usually not the thing that's going to predict whether or not they change their behaviour. Because we're not quite as rational as we like to think, and our brain is great at filling in all the blanks and stuff. So here's an example of that. Hopefully this has got no sound with it, because the guys... So this is Charlie... this is a face mask of Charlie Chaplin, and it's hollow. It's hollow at the back. So as you see it go round, keep your eye on it. So you can see it's cut off at the back, and then it's completely hollow inside. But as it starts to come round, what you're going to notice is that it looks like it starts to go the other way, and now it looks like a face again, even though that is actually the inside of a hollowed out mask, but it looks 3D the other way. And as you see now, it comes back round again, and you can see Charlie Chaplin's face coming around. And the reason for that is because we are predisposed to see faces. That's why people see Jesus' face in toast and stuff like that, because we've evolved to look for faces. That's just the way it is, and our brain's great at filling in all the gaps around that type of stuff. Here's another one. No, you read that wrong. In fact, you read it wrong twice, probably. If you're like most people, you probably read that wrong twice, because that's just the way our brain works. If you've ever seen those things where they've got like the first letter correct and the last letter correct, and you can still make out what the sentence is, because your brain knows roughly what's going on. It's in context. It's in a social context. And a lot of the stuff, I'm not a behavioural economist. I'm an behavioural economics enthusiast, if you like, and we're trying to use it as much as we can. I've worked with a lot of teams in Public Health England. They've got a behavioural insights team, which is all around behavioural economics, and also DH have got a behavioural insights team. Lots of universities. In the Cabinet Office, if you've heard of the Nudge Unit, that's all around behavioural economics as well. And this is a great book for anyone who's interested. I've stolen a lot of these ideas directly out of this book today, but this is a fantastic introduction to behavioural economics and some of the theories and some of the experiments, because everything that people think that motivates them can be empirically tested, and when it is, very often it's not the thing that they think is motivating them. So who am I? As Lee mentioned, I met Lee when I was at Public Health England, but before that I worked in sports development, and I was developing weight management services, including Busybodies, which is currently our Busy Families programme. For a number of years, and then running those self-employed through sports development when there was sort of all sorts of funding issues. But I have to say to any Sport England people in the office, in the audience, thank you very much, because you were actually the people that gave us our first funding pot, and we got started based on that. So thank you very much, Sport England. And then I went and worked in obesity in public health in the NHS, and then as the NHS public health team moved over in the council, so in local authority. But then the Healthy Weight team at Public Health England, and then followed by developing and delivering the Everybody Active Every Day events. So I know some people will have gone to some of our events that we did around the country, and some people will have gone to the launch as well of the Everybody Active Every Day document. And there's a really interesting point about it. I think this conference has been fantastic, and some of the physical activities that you've got here and all that type of stuff is brilliant, because it's great to see. But we had to fight tooth and nail to get physical activity into the Everybody Active Every Day launch, and which I found weird. I was saying, look, if we don't do this, who's going to do this? But there was a great moment where we had lots of climbing and slacklining and all this other stuff going on. But we did a Bollywood dancing. We had the National Director for Public Health, Kevin Fenton, getting up and dancing, and we wanted it to be a bigger deal. So I got a microphone and I went round to some of the tables, because the default at an event like this is to sit back and do as little as possible, and you really have to coax people to actually take part. Even though you're a really sort of lively bunch, you still have to be coaxed to take part in things. And certainly at our event, that was what the case was. But what was lovely was when I walked around and was sort of saying, yes, that means you. You need to get up and come and do the dancing. Yeah, that and you, yeah. And I just embarrassed them into it, essentially. But there came a point where there was a tipping point between it being more awkward to be sat out doing nothing than there was to be doing something. So what we created was a social norm where people were primed to do something rather than not do something. And it was all based on social pressure, or bullying, whichever way you want to look at it. And so what in reading through the Sporting Futures document, which I know is obviously a big part of your delivery now, I was really pleased to see that David Cameron and that Tracy Crouch had put in that we're not just talking about throughput now, we're not just talking about participation, but we're talking about why sport is important, because you will deliver or manage people who deliver activities because you know the value of sport and physical activity. And it isn't just, oh, it's good for their health. It's not good for their physical health. It's good for their physical well-being and their mental well-being and their individual development. Watching people achieve things, watching their level of confidence grow is the most rewarding thing that you can do. And I know that you all know that, but now you've got an opportunity to actually put something in place to sort of demonstrate that and focus on not just participation, but other things on top. And I think that opens really great doors for organisations like ours, and we'll certainly be working with Lloyd and his team in Team Beds in Luton. Fantastic CSP, by the way, Lloyd. A little plug for you. But we'll certainly be working with them, and we'll be putting behavioural economics into that because we think it's really important in reaching the hard to reach. So can behavioural economics help? And so for those who aren't quite sure still what we're talking about with behavioural economics, what we're talking about is behavioural insights, understanding what it is that actually motivates people to do stuff rather than what they think motivates them to do stuff. So that's what we're talking about essentially. It helps with decision making. And another thing that I think is really important when we're delivering services, and our whole branding is based around this, is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And this is a great book, again, by Simon Sinek, Start With Why. But it's really important that you're living out your brand values. I know the CSP have got a very strong brand values. Are you living those out? Is it something that just oozes out of you when you talk, the people that you talk to, the way that you talk to them? Do all of your staff buy into that? Do your coaches buy into that? We had an interesting discussion yesterday where someone was saying, well, I haven't just, I'm bought into this, but I've got to get my staff to buy into it, and they've got to get the coaches to buy into it. And then the coaches have got to get the people that they're delivering to buy into it. So you've got a sales job to do, and the best way to do that is to just live out your values in everything that you do. And true to that, the reason that I do what I do, I can boil it down to three things. I love helping people find things that they love to do. And I'm sure that's something that you also share because you're involved in sport and physical activity. And helping people achieve things that they didn't know that they could, which is another fantastic thing involved in sport. But I love doing that with both the people that we work with, but also with our staff and building our staff up in that way. And lastly, to have fun. And there's no better feeling than providing our staff with an opportunity to come to work every day, loving what they do, and they have meaning attached to their work, and they have a lot of fun when they come to work. Because we employ for personality first and everything else second, because it's really important when working with people that you're personable. But you know this. So I'm just really quickly going to run over some of our programs, because what I want to say is that when we advertise our programs, when we design our programs, we understand what people think they want when they come on, but then we understand what actually, we're trying to understand what actually predisposes behaviour change and what predisposes people to actually take part in something. So for example, our BeeZee Bumps program, people come to BeeZee Bumps, they're pregnant women, they come to BeeZee Bumps for weight management during and after their pregnancy. And they think they're coming just because of the health of their baby. And that is true. Let's just be honest, that it is always to do with the health of their baby. But the reason they come back week after week after week is because they make connections with people in a similar situation. So actually what we do is we sit around and have a cup of tea and a chat. And then, I don't, there's people that do that. There's women that do that with other women. And they have a cup of tea and a chat, and they talk about their babies, they talk about the things that matter to them. And then they build social connection. And that's the thing that keeps them coming back each week. They say, I'm going because of the health of my baby. But the thing that actually motivates them to go, to get up and bother to go, is the fact that they're getting to see people in a similar situation. Do people like me do things like this, is the question that they're asking themselves. Similarly with Henry. Henry's a national programme, but we work with Henry to deliver 0 to 5 healthy lifestyle service, essentially. People think they're coming to get recipes and physical activity ideas. What they actually get is parenting advice. And because they're getting good parenting advice and they're going away feeling empowered, that's what motivates them to come back. But they still think, oh, I go to Henry because I get recipes and I get physical activity. Fine, they can keep thinking that. But the reality is that we're giving them something more, and we're empowering them when they leave to be different parents, to sort of put behaviour changes in place that work for them. Similarly with BeeZee Families. BeeZee Families is a 17-week weight management service for overweight children and their parents or guardians. When they come to the service, they think, they're panicking. No one wants an overweight child. That's just universal. No one wants to have an overweight child. So that's not a sexy service. We're trying to sell it in certain ways, but no one is thinking, yes, I can't wait to go to a weight management service for me and my child, because of the social convention around those things. But when they come along, they think they're going to come in for physical activity and healthy eating, and they do that. But really, we get parents in and we start talking to them about things that actually matter to them. We start talking to them about relationships, ex-partners, how is that impacting on their ability to make change? You know, what conflicts are going on at the moment? What are the grandparents doing? It's my prerogative to spoil my grandchildren. That's what we get a lot of. So we're actually helping work through those things, but they still say to people, oh, we're going to Fat Club, because they like to trivialise the situation and whatever else. And they go, oh, we're going to go and get some recipes and we're going to go and do some physical activity. They still think that, fine. But we know we're focusing on something different. We're focusing on behaviour change. Slimming World and Weight Watchers I won't go into, but we do contract these, but we give these out to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford to go. But what we recognise with Slimming World and Weight Watchers is, in the 12 weeks you can achieve great things. However, is the long-term impact as great as that? So we actually provide additional support where we're getting text messages and WhatsApp messages, phone calls, emails, one-to-ones over Skype, because we want to make sure that this stuff actually fits into their real life, not just a flash in the pan to lose weight for a holiday or to lose weight for a wedding, which is why most people come to us in the first place. Believe is another example of how we're using behavioural economics or just targeting services where people are. It's primarily aimed at black and minority ethnic communities in a religious setting. So we use faith as a starting point. And what we do is we say to them, we say to the local imam, for example, look, it's in your books. Being healthy is in your books. Looking after your body is in your books. Why don't we deliver something together? So we deliver an evidence-based message with our dietetic and nutrition staff, and they contextualise it for us. They put it all into a religious context. They put it all into a cultural context for us. So we gain their credibility. We gain the cultural references that they use to sell things into their congregations. And ultimately, they're still a community after we leave. So they can continue to support people after we've left. They think they're going along to do something with the imam and whatever else. But actually, they're coming along to get some real behaviour change that works for them, that works in context of their real lives. And then BeeZee Chat is our one-to-one over Skype. Well, for illustrative, it's not Skype, but it's something like that. And it's just a one-to-one service where we give behaviour change advice, and it's great at accessing people who otherwise wouldn't access it. So people with disabilities, people with transport issues, young children, shift workers, people who don't want to go to groups. Not everyone wants to go to groups and talk about their weight in front of other people. Fine. They can access the service anyway. And lastly, Gutless, which is one of my favourites. And Gutless is our response to... we've got the opposite problem in weight management that you have in sport. Men don't want to get involved in weight management and women do, which is sort of the other way around for you guys, I think. But Gutless is by men for men, and what we're doing is we're using a different way of targeting men. So we use cultural references like it's like Yorkie, not for girls, all that type of stuff, and we put things like this on our advertising. So we do jokes on our advertising about faster in a go-kart, become witty, not jolly, see a bit more of the old chap, that type of stuff. And prevention of nagging. But I'll tell you the one biggest predictor of whether someone's going to come to Gutless or not on that list, and we say it's a joke, but prevention of nagging. The number of guys that come through our service and say, I've got a wife or a partner who wants them to lose weight and they're just doing it to shut them up, is astonishing. So prevention of nagging, although it's a joke, it's a real motivator. And you wouldn't put it out there and say, look, this is a dead serious campaign around prevention of nagging. But if you put it on there, it is always there for them to sort of take on board. And then we're taking it a little step further. This is our Read Between the Lines campaign, where we're looking to sort of be a bit evocative, put this in toilets, in pubs and things like that, and sort of, you know, call out to fat blokes and say, look, come to Gutless. This is what we're saying is, do people like you do things like this? Well, this is our humour, this is the way we approach this subject. So if you like it, good, come along. If you don't, it's not for you. Do BeeZee Chat, that's what I'll be saying. So this is Dave, my mate Dave. He comes to, he's 74, he comes to Gutless, and he lost his wife last year. He can't walk very far, he doesn't have many friends. Why does he come to Gutless? He comes to Gutless to get fitter, to lose weight, and to improve his walking. He walks with a cane. But actually, that's why he says he comes to Gutless. But in week one, he told the group, in fact, I don't see anyone from last Monday to this Monday. I haven't got a friend in the world, he said. And I was a bit emotional, actually. But he said, I haven't got a friend in the world. So everything that we do now is based around helping Dave create links at the club, create social links. He loves football, so there's a guy there that's going to take him to the football at the end of the programme, but he's too nervous to go because he can't walk the distances that he needs to comfortably, so he's worried about going. So we're working towards fitness goals around that and being sociable. He's joined different groups around his area and all that type of stuff. So everything we do is based around getting Dave to feel like he's part of a group and to sort of make friends and stuff. He still thinks he's coming to get fitter and lose weight. Fine, keep thinking that. But he's actually coming because he likes the people that he gets to see there. And so that's our busy world. But I know I'm running short on time, so I'm gonna move on. So this is the behavioural economics bit, and I've chosen a couple of things to talk about because there are actually loads of behavioural economics things that we could talk about, and I do in our workshop. So apologies to people who came to the workshop because some of this is being repeated. But this is choice architecture is basically using an understanding of the way people make decisions to create choices for them that default them into the healthiest choice. That's what we're trying to do for people. And this is an example of that. A urinal with a fly in it, it increases the accuracy of men's pee in toilets significantly. So much so, in fact, and this is empirical, so much so, in fact, that there are now games that you can do in toilets. People have invested in putting toilets in that have games in them so that you can pee more accurately, because it means they have to clean less, I suppose. I don't know. So that's an example. Another one is reusing towels. You've all, presumably most of you stayed in the hotel last night. Did you notice that you had a reuse your towels, please reuse your towels sign in your thing? Did anyone do it? Were you here for 2 nights or were you only here for the 1 night? I don't know. But it turns out that there's lots of studies around the reuse of towels and what predicts that behaviour. And this is actually from my room. This think, do you really have to have your towels laundered? Help us help our environment by reusing them. Well, if you frame those messages differently, you can get a different response. So helping save energy, 16% reuse. Partner with the hotel to save environment, which is what they've done here, 31%. And I asked them how many people reuse. They said between 20 and 25%. But then when you get into a more personal message about social norms, about understanding that 75% of the guests reused their towels in this hotel, 44% reused. And when you make it even more specific to people who stayed in your room, have used, 75% of those people have reused, then you get up to sort of 50% and even higher in some studies as well. Whether or not it would be the previous guest in your room reused their towels might have an even more of a social norm effect, I don't know. But this is interesting that you can frame things differently. So maybe I'll mention that to the hotel before I leave. They could actually do a lot better on towel reuse. But this is a really interesting thing to note, that when you're framing messages for people, the way you say it and the things that you tap into are going to have an impact on people's behaviour. And actually, when you ask people, why do you reuse your towels? They say, because I care about the environment. But the behaviour is actually predicted by social norms. And they would never know that. They would never say that. Similarly with pensions, people don't change their pensions very easily. And that's why the auto-enrolment thing's happening at the moment, and it's being rolled out across the country over the next over the last 3 or 4 years. Because people just aren't starting pensions, because the default is, it's your responsibility, you go away, you do it, you've got to do the work. But if you do that, then people don't start their own pensions, or very few people do. And once they do, they don't change it. It's like your energy supplier or your bank. There's probably better deals out there, but how many people are changing? Even though you're being encouraged regularly to change your suppliers, people stick with the defaults because it's actually it's a lot harder to just start changing things than people think. This is an example of, we're going to put these up, we're just getting a new office, we're going to put these up in our office because it's just a good reminder to turn the lights off. This is just a little nudge towards turning the lights off before you leave the room, sort of remembering the environment and stuff. And similarly with designing programs, because obviously either you're designing programs, you're running programs, you're managing people who run programs, it's important to note that the way you design your choice architecture has a massive impact on whether people take it up or not. So these aren't my clothes, but this is exactly what I do, because I'm training at the moment for an Ironman, stupidly. And if I lay my clothes out, ready, there's 2 reasons that it influences me to train the next day, before I go to bed. This is, 1, there's a trigger there for me. So as I get up, I can see the trigger and I think, oh yeah, I've got to exercise today, I've got to go out for a run. And the other thing is, it's all there for me. So all the activation energy required to go to my drawer, that messy drawer there, and start finding all my stuff, that lacks both the trigger and the incentive to just pick stuff up and start running with it, literally. And you've got the same sort of thing in designing programs. So if you run workplace challenges or other physical activities or sports clubs or whatever, people say, I want to come along to it, and they've got motivation to come along and all that type of stuff. But the most likely predictor of whether someone's going to come along, and this isn't empirical, this is just off the top of my head, but the most likely predictors, because we hear people say this, are things like, do I have to go home first? Because if you have to go home first, you're much less likely to come back out again and then go and do an activity than if you just have to go there on the way back from work. Do I have to go past my house, or do I have to go away from my house to do the activity and then go back past it again to get home to get home afterwards? That has an impact on whether people can be bothered to go out of their way. Oh, I've got to go out of my way. I'm even further away at 7 o'clock once I finish. Have I already paid? Does someone I know go? These are the things that are going to influence people to go. But they won't say, the biggest influencer for me is if I have to go past away from my house to go back again. They're not going to say that. They're going to say something else. But if you can help answer some of these questions, think through the behavioural economics of the situation, think through the nudges that you can put in place, then you might be able to answer some of them questions for them and design the choice architecture that works and helps them to attend. But even if they do attend, what then? So hands up if you have drunk at one of these 3 establishments in the last 6 months. Almost everyone. But these establishments didn't even exist, a short while ago. When they came over, when Starbucks, for example, came over from the States, what was it that made you start going into there? Where were you getting your coffee needs met before? They weren't set up as coffee shops. They were set up as third places between the home and work. They were just comfortable places that happened to sell coffee. That's how they sort of set that business model up. But everyone seems to access these places now. And why? Because you know someone who went there. They pop up on your way to work. They're very visual. There's lots of advertising. They're herding you towards going. And then once you've made that decision once, you don't have to make it again because you've been. And then you're a fully rational human being, and therefore you make decisions based on the best available evidence every time. And so you stand behind that decision again and again and again. And it's called self-herding. You go to the same place, or you buy that type of coffee again and again and again, because that's the decision you made originally, and you just stand behind that. So what does this mean for us in terms of developing activities and services that people actually care about? Is, well, are you providing an environment that backs up their decision, their initial decision to come, that makes them think that was a good decision? That was a good decision because this is actually better than I thought. And so are you creating environments where they're self-herding, or are you creating environments where they're going, actually, this was a terrible decision? And so that's my question to you, really, is are you living out the CSP mission in your programs? And crucially, does everyone involved know? Do your coaches know that they've got to look for things like what we do with David? Do they know they're supposed to look for things like what's actually motivating people, not what they think's motivating people to go? Are they equipped to sort of identify those reasons? Have you told them that that's important? Are they supporting wider outcomes? Are they looking at the people going through the service and trying to create defaults that default them into both doing the activity, removing barriers, and then continuing to do something afterwards, or translating that newfound skill base or whatever it is into some forward action? And the bottom line for me, and the reason that we're taking note of this behavioural economics stuff, is because it's happening anyway. It's happening. You can like it or lump it, but it is going to happen. People are making decisions based on things that they don't necessarily know about. So you can either try and do something about it, or you can just ignore it and hope for the best. It's up to you. That's the way we look at it. I don't think we've got time for questions, actually, Lee, but thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.